Welcome to this two-part series on integrity. We're going to talk about in part one, what is integrity, the nature of integrity and its importance, and we're going to get pretty deep metaphysically on that point, but also we're going to cover practical aspects. And then in part two, we're going to talk about how to actually develop integrity within yourself. So let's get started. I'm actually really excited about this series because first of all, it's extremely foundational. This is sort of the core of personal development work here. So you got to understand this idea in order to really make something of yourself in your life. And also because I've been wanting to actually cover this topic for years now. It's been on my to-do list and I just haven't been getting around to it. I've been procrastinating with other topics. So now it's time to get in. All right, so integrity is extremely important. It's probably way more important than you think it is. It's more important than most people think it is. And it took me a while myself to start to understand the significance of what integrity really is for human life, for living a good life. And the problem I had with it is that when I was growing up, I basically sort of skipped over a lot of the religious indoctrination where a lot of our moral systems come from, like stuff like family values and morality, this sort of stuff. Like, to me, this was nonsense. I could clearly see the problems with an absolutist Judeo-Christian moral ethic or whatever culture it's coming from. So I was sort of intellectually, cognitively beyond that. But that sort of lays a little trap for us here if we're going to be very scientific and atheistic and skeptical the way that I was when I was younger, is that you tend to poo-poo everything that has to do with any sort of system of morality or anything that smacks or even whiffs of religion or the kind of moral systems that religion promotes. And so I was just instinctively averse to that. And because of that, I sort of dismissed this whole field. And then it took me years and decades to come back around to it. So if you're a scientifically minded person, if you're an atheist, if you're a skeptic, if you're a cynic, you might also think like, well, integrity, that sounds like some sort of thing that maybe some like Mike Pence Christian would say. And then we know they're all hypocrites and all this. And we know that morality is actually relativistic and blah, blah, blah. And so what value does integrity truly have? What does it even mean to say that someone has integrity or doesn't? After all, isn't it just a matter of opinion, personal opinion? I mean, it's not like a scientific fact, right? Well, keep your mind open because there's something deeper to integrity and to this whole idea of religious values and morals than it first seems, especially when you hear it from religious people or in church or something like that. So I'm not going to be filling your mind here with dogma or ideology, but we're just going to be taking a real good hard look at this concept of integrity, and you'll see how powerful and important it is. All right, so integrity is paramount for living a good life, if you're interested in that. Success, psychological health, and ego development, which we've talked a lot about in the past in my series on spiral dynamics, or on the Susan Cook-Reuter ego development model. So those different stages of development that one goes through as one self-actualizes and matures, integrity is crucial for that. And the higher you go, the more integrity is required. It's extremely important and paramount for spiritual work, which of course I'm always talking about here, and for discovering truth. And because truth, of course, is love, as we've talked about in the past, these two are identical. You can't have love without integrity. So these are all pretty important things, don't you think? The good life, success, psychological health and development, and truth and love. I mean, what more is there in life but these things? You got to want at least one of these things, right? Hopefully all of them. All right, so the self-actualizing and spiritual person really without integrity is rather pathetic and broken. And there are plenty of these people around. And believe me, I'm not speaking from a position where I'm trying to say that I have the highest integrity. I struggle with integrity myself. In part 2 of this series, I will share with you some of my own struggles with developing integrity and and areas in which I'm still working on myself. So by no means am I saying that I'm above it. In fact, I'm very cognizant as I grow myself as a teacher of this stuff, of how much of a responsibility it puts upon me to really walk my talk, because it's very easy to sit up here and to just blabbermouth. And in fact, that's what most YouTubers are doing. They're just blabbermouthing stuff. It's like the easiest job, really. It's the easiest job in the world. Just to talk and talk and talk. But then, does your talk actually get embodied in your life? That's the really difficult part. And there's a lot of spiritual teachers and even non-spiritual teachers, just personal development teachers and business gurus and so forth, pickup coaches, psychotherapists even, who will, tell you how to live your life, but then when you look at their life, are they really in integrity? A lot of them are very pathetic and broken. That's because they don't have the integrity of the things they speak about. And I've certainly been guilty of that, and I still am guilty of that in certain respects. But anyways, enough of that. So the question is, why is integrity so paramount? That's something I want you to start to contemplate. If you start to agree with me that integrity is so important, why is it so important? That's a homework assignment for you right there. So I'm going to try to guide you towards an understanding of that, a deeper understanding. All right, so think of a person in your life who you've personally known, who's had a significant influence on you, not just a celebrity or something on TV or some YouTuber, but someone you know close to you, maybe a parent, a friend, a teacher, a professor, a family member, who had low integrity. Surely you've run into a person like this in your life, face to face, not just virtually. So bring up an example like that of somebody with low integrity. How do you feel about that person? What impact did that person have on you? If you know about that person's life intimately, how well does their life run? How smooth is their life? How happy is this person? What kind of results does this person get in their life? Are they a highly successful person? Are they very spiritually developed? Are they a very loving person? And now, to contrast that, think of a person who you've personally known in your life, face to face, who you would say had high integrity. Surely you must have encountered at least one such person in your life. A teacher, a friend, an intimate partner, maybe one of your parents, maybe a sibling of yours, a coworker, a boss. Now, bring to mind how that person makes you feel when you think about him or her. What kind of impact did this person have on your life? And if you know anything about this person's personal life, how did their life run? Was it smooth? Was this person happy? Successful? Had a lot of friends? Loving? Trustworthy? So this starts to get your mind thinking along the right track. So what is integrity really? Well, it's helpful to turn to the dictionary, and the dictionary, Merriam-Webster specifically, gives us a couple of nice definitions to get us going here in our inquiry. The first definition is, quote, firm adherence to a code of especially moral or artistic values. Secondly, quote, a refusal to lie, steal, or deceive in any way. Thirdly, quote, incorruptibility. And then the Oxford Dictionary has a nice one, which is a little bit more abstract. I really fell in love with this definition when I read it, because the ordinary definitions are what I just kind of gave you. And then this one really makes it spiritual and metaphysical here. And we're going to get real deep on this one in a little bit later in this episode. But it's this, quote, the state of being whole or undivided. That should ring some bells for you, shouldn't it? If you've seen my holism and holistic thinking episodes, then your mind should start to connect some dots here. Whole and undivided. What does being whole and undivided have to do with integrity and with living a good life? Why would these things be connected? Good things to think about. So integrity basically means honesty, character, morality, uprightness, virtue, goodness, wholeness, trustworthiness, walking your talk, keeping your word. And it's important to understand that integrity is not just something you're doing externally for others. It's not a facade of being a righteous person that you are erecting for social purposes, to gain some social advantage, or to fit in, or to be religious. In fact, we might say that that's the opposite of integrity, if you're doing it for those reasons. Integrity is really who you are when you're not trying to impress somebody, or manipulate somebody, or put on some sort of facade. Because if you only have integrity externally but not internally, you really don't have integrity. That itself is already a split, do you see? Because there's now sort of the outer face you show to others, then there's the inner world that you live in yourself, and this creates a sort of schizophrenic reality that you live in. And many of us are dealing with this kind of situation. It's how we survive, is when we're living in difficult environments where it's difficult to survive, we have to sort of create a false facade that we put out there for others. This is part of the social game that we play, our social survival. And this, of course, creates all sorts of challenges. We'll get into that a bit later here. Now let's mention what is the opposite of integrity. I think, one word, the best way to sum it up is opportunism. But there's a lot of other great synonyms: corruption, devilry, evil, sin, villainy, wickedness, badness, hypocrisy, bullshit. The willingness to lie, cheat, steal, exploit, deceive, mislead, manipulate, cut corners. Untrustworthiness. In a sense, opportunism. Or, of course, ego, right? Ego. All of these are characteristics of what? A very dense, fearful, insecure ego that is trying to survive by any means possible. See, the logic here becomes very crystal clear and simple once you think it through a little bit and clarify this stuff in your mind. So really, our objective here is to help you to develop integrity, but before we can get into that proper, which we'll do in part 2, the first step towards developing integrity is really just to start to understand what it is and why it's important and how it interconnects with all these other aspects of life, so that you see that when you're acting without integrity, this produces suffering and negative consequences in your life, a lot of them which are longer term, which don't come to fruition for sometimes for months, for years, for decades. And then your mind doesn't connect the dots and it doesn't see how your lack of integrity is contributing to the problems that you have in your life. Because this idea of integrity is sort of an abstraction, right? But then in your everyday life, you face very tangible, concrete, mundane problems. Like you argue with your spouse, your friend is angry with you, you have trouble in business, you're not able to earn the money you want to earn, clients aren't buying from you for some reason. You have problems with your children, your children aren't listening to you, they're not following your instructions, they're not disciplined, they're unruly, they're getting bad grades. And you're not able to discipline yourself, you have difficulty meditating, and you have difficulty staying on a diet, and you have difficulty motivating yourself to follow your life purpose. And so you have these tangible problems, and it's not clear to you immediately, unless you contemplate it and do this inquiry, that integrity might be sort of a sourcing many of these problems. So as you contemplate, you should make those connections. Let me ask you this. Do you want to, for example, buy a product from somebody who has low integrity or high integrity? Do you want a business partner who has low integrity or high integrity? Do you want to give your email address to a company of low integrity or high integrity? Do you want to play golf with someone of low integrity or high integrity? Do you want to eat a supplement from a company with low integrity or with high integrity? Do you want to have sex with someone with low integrity or with high integrity? Do you want to be married to a spouse of low integrity or high integrity? Do you want to be ruled by a politician of low integrity or high integrity? Do you want to work for a boss of low integrity or high integrity? If you were following someone into battle, would you want him or her to be of low integrity or high integrity? If your life depended on them following through. If you were going to debate an intellectual, would you want him to be of low integrity or high integrity? If you were going to go to a doctor, to a surgeon, to a lawyer, to an accountant, would you want one of low integrity or high integrity? If you had a friend, would you want a low integrity friend or a high integrity friend? If you were getting your news, your evening news, from some journalist or news anchor, would you want this person to be of low integrity or high integrity? And if you had a spiritual guru or a mentor or a teacher who you relied upon to guide you in life, would you want him or her to be of low or high integrity? See, integrity is important in many crucial domains of life. In business, in career, in life purpose, in art, in creative work, in education, academia, science, medicine, in family, in relationships, in friendships, in marriage, with raising children, with charity or nonprofit work, in advertising and marketing, in philosophy, spirituality, and truth-seeking, in politics, in governance, in community building. If you're part of a community, do you want to be part of a low-integrity community or a high-integrity community? It's important in leadership. you should notice historically, if you're a student of history, that low integrity leaders almost always crash and burn in the end. They don't make it for very long. Why is that? Why is it that people don't want to follow low integrity leaders? And that some of the world's greatest leaders who amassed the greatest followings were actually some of the most integrous human beings who ever lived. Think of maybe Jesus, the Buddha, Mahavira, Gandhi, MLK. Now I hear you saying, "Oh, Leo, I can point out problems with Gandhi and I can point out problems with MLK. He didn't have that high of integrity." Fair point. Some of these leaders didn't have perfect integrity, but I'm not talking about perfect integrity. I'm just talking about a fairly high degree of integrity. It's very hard to find a human being with perfect integrity. So be careful with this sort of perfectionistic cynicism. So what you notice is that actually people don't want to follow a devil long term. Such leaders aren't sustainable. Now you might say, but Leo, what about Hitler? And what about Trump? And what about other devilish leaders who've amassed big followings and deceived many people and have very low integrity, and they're philanderers and they're cheats and they don't pay their taxes and they are racists and whatever else? Yeah, there are also very many low integrity leaders out there, and they can paradoxically become very successful. But also what you should notice is that their success is usually short-lived. And again, like I say, they crash and burn. So before they crash and burn, they can have enormous success, shocking levels of success and wealth and sex and fame and all of these things. But usually it's not sustainable. Usually there's a price to be paid for it. See, integrity is not a short-term value, it's more of a long-term value. It tends to pay the greatest dividends over the long term. And so if you're not thinking long-term, then you probably don't see the value of integrity. And you can find many, many examples of successful business people, Wall Street types and so forth, who have achieved a lot of success, material success with very low integrity. In fact, because of their low integrity. So I'm not painting a simplistic, overly idealized, romanticized notion here that good people prosper in the world and that the devils and the wicked, they all crash and burn. No, not necessarily. A lot of devils and the wicked, they skate by in life and they get away with a lot of stuff. Trump comes to mind, of course. It's amazing all the stuff he's been able to get away with in his life, all the criminality, all the the affairs and the schemes and the manipulations and the lies and all of this. It's amazing how good he's able to get away with stuff. But also, there are consequences. There are consequences for his actions. And, by the end of his life, maybe he won't be able to get away with all of it. Like some think. So also where integrity is important, besides leadership, is with health, with nutrition, with fitness, with sports, with games, even with video games. Do you want to play against someone in an FPS match who's a cheater? Online games have a huge cheating problem these days. These giant companies like Blizzard and Activision and so forth, they have entire teams devoted just to preventing gamers from cheating in these competitive online games. There's a whole industry. It's like $1 billion industry just preventing cheating using third-party software and bots and God knows what other things they use, macros and things. See? So think of all of these different fields that I've mentioned, and I want to specifically stress here your creative work. This is one of those things a lot of people overlook, and it's not really talked about anywhere. I don't see it talked about very often in society. But usually when we talk about business or career or work, obviously if you're cheating at your work or you're cutting corners, it's kind of obvious to see the problems and the lack of integrity that creates. But there's a sort of an even deeper lack of integrity that I see all around business, in the business world and the corporate world. It's that people are just opportunistically doing the work that earns them the most money or material rewards and not really following their passion or their life purpose or their true creative calling, their art. Their work is not their art. And the reason that is it's not because they're not artists, right? When I say art, I mean it in a very broad, abstract sense. It applies to you even if you're an accountant or a doctor or a scientist or a manager or a CEO or some financial type of person who normally you would think, well, that's not an artistic person. But that can be your art if you make it your art. But for it to be your art, it has to be more than something about the material gain. It has to be more than just opportunism. There has to be some spiritual component to the work that you're doing, your creative work. And so a lot of what I'm trying to have you guys embody is a life purpose and some kind of creative contribution that you make to mankind. To me, this is core to building a good life. If you're not really doing creative work, first of all, you're missing out on such a huge and beautiful and delicious and rewarding aspect of life. Like, at least half of the meaning of life is lost if you don't have some kind of art form that you're working on, whatever it happens to be. But also, you're spiritually disconnected with your work. You're not going to be at the top of your game at your work if you don't have this. And the reason many people don't have it is because it's difficult. It's really difficult to be an artist because art requires integrity. When you're doing art, you're doing something beyond mere opportunism or personal gain. It's a quasi-spiritual experience, depending on how far you take it. And if you take it really far, it becomes a full-blown spiritual experience. If you really know what you're doing and you integrate all of these various ideas that I share with you through Actualized.org. So your work can happen at many different levels, from the very lowest work where you're working at Starbucks at a job you hate and you just resent it every single day, to something a little bit higher than that where you actually have a decent career with some, decent salary and some prospects for growth and some creative freedom and so forth. But I mean, that's a lot better. But then there's really high levels of doing your work where it becomes your life's work, where it becomes an art form. And that's something that I teach in my course, the Life Purpose course. If you are interested in that, check that out. It's like 25 hours explaining how to set up your life in that way and how to find your life purpose. So, we just zoomed in onto this one particular domain because I found it relevant. And I mean, I guess there's still something more I wanted to say. It's this. Is that, see, nobody in our society, like when we're growing up, when we're going to school, our parents and so forth, nobody really instills in us the importance of artistic integrity. And in fact, we can be mocked for that. If you have any kind of sense of artistic integrity just naturally, intuitively, the way you grew up, maybe you have an artistic mind or artistic sort of spirit, and you know what I'm talking about, the importance of artistic integrity, but it's so difficult to maintain that, especially amidst all your friends, family, and colleagues, and even fellow artists who are cutting corners and are low integrity. They don't have any principles by which they're living their life. They don't have any principles by which they're doing their work. Their principle is just, hey, whatever works, whatever is the path of least resistance. But this is not how you build a great life. This is how you get the kind of mediocre results that everybody else around you is getting. So integrity is about having kind of values and principles above and beyond just bare survival or what happens to work. And then the difficulty is staying true to those principles and values when things get difficult. There's a cost to integrity. It's more difficult than just opportunistically doing what works. You have to put more consciousness and thought into your relationships, your marriage, your education, the way you advertise and market, the way you do business in order to do it with integrity. A business with high integrity is actually a pretty rare thing, because most business people just want to make money. And so they're willing to take the path of least resistance to doing that, and they don't want to exert any work beyond that. Their business is not turned into a sort of an art form or it has no spiritual connection. And yeah, businesses should have a spiritual connection. I recommend if you do business, then you do it in a spiritual way. Your business should have a soul. That means it's more than just about earning money. And see, so nobody really talks very much about how important this integrity is. Or if they do, they talk about it from a spiral dynamic stage blue perspective, where they just give you dogma and ideology about which morals and values you're supposed to follow. That's not what I'm doing here. Integrity is not something that can be turned into an algorithm. Integrity requires consciousness, and in fact, it requires an open mind. It requires letting go of dogmas and following rules. But it does require some principles and some values that you should be clear about with yourself. That means you got to get clear about what you really want out of life, what's important to you, what's meaningful to you. And then you got to be willing to pay the cost to enforce that. So if you're running a business, most of your employees are not going to be interested in integrity or your values or ideals or the artistry of your business. They're just going to be interested in just doing a bare minimum sort of job to please you as the boss, to get their paycheck. You got to lead them and inspire them to also get interested in your ideals and values. And you got to communicate them. And then, of course, in order to really get these values, if you really value something, it's not enough for you to just value it in your mind. You got to also, you want to see it realized, actualized in the world, right? It's no good to have this ideal of a business, but then in reality, your business is doing some shady stuff. Like, if you really want your business to be an art and to have soul, then you're going to have to work extra hard to find the kind of employees who also care about those things. You got to pay them more, because those people are rarer and they're going to have more, they're going to need to be more skillful. You got to pay them more. That means you're going to have to earn more. You're going to have to be more creative with your budget and so forth to make that work. And then you're going to be competing against other businesses who are not doing that, who are, hiring employees for cheap offshore and so forth, don't care about integrity, who are scamming their customers and so forth. And they might even be outselling you by doing that, because they have shady, low integrity advertising and marketing strategies, and you don't want to. You could use those marketing strategies, but you don't want to. You could do clickbait titles. You could do scammy sorts of sales pages. You could do spam email lists. And, there's a lot of shady marketing stuff you could do. But if your business is about something higher than just the quantity of your sales, then you may not want to do those tactics. In fact, you might be conscious of how those tactics are actually corrupting the entire epistemic ecosystem of our society and our culture, and the kind of toxic impact this has on the health of our culture and our society. So that makes your business and marketing harder. Now you got to find more conscious ways of doing advertising and marketing. How do you do that? Well, how many people are teaching conscious advertising and marketing strategies? Almost zero compared to all the gurus who are teaching you the most low consciousness advertising and marketing strategies. By the way, if you want a really deep, profound discussion of marketing and advertising, go check out my older episode called The Deep Problem of Marketing. It's one of my most underrated but most important episodes. There's some very profound insights there about that. So my point is that really, if you're going to be integrous, the only way you're going to do it is by wanting to do it yourself. No one's going to push you into it. You have to adopt that idea yourself. And in fact, you're going to be fighting the whole world, because the whole world is going to be trying to lure you in with shortcuts and traps, trying to get you to back down from your artistic values, right? Like if you're an artist, most employers you go to work for, they don't give a shit about your artistic values and principles. They just want you to do their work for them. And then that's probably going to involve you in sacrificing some of those. And then the question is, are you going to take that job or are you going to reject it? And if you reject it, then how are you going to feed yourself? You see? So of course, it's all wrapped up with survival. There's a good reason why integrity is a rare thing. And when you find a friend or a teacher or a mentor or a guru or a scientist or a doctor who has high integrity, or a spouse or a friend who has high integrity, you really value that person. There's something special about that. Or a business. Think of right now some business or company that you've done business with in your life that was like really high integrity and it impressed you. And you're happy to go back to them years later and to pay them even extra because of the integrity with which that company is run. And then, of course, think of the opposite, which is much easier because there's more examples of it. Think of a company that had no integrity at all. How do you feel about that? And if you want to be a leader, what kind of leader do you want to be? High integrity leader or low integrity leader? Consider how they crash and burn, the low integrity ones. And then being a high integrity leader, that's one of the most difficult things you can undertake in your life. Because that means you really got to walk your talk. And you can really only lead people up to the level of where you are at developmentally and consciously. So any bottlenecks within your own consciousness and ego development that's going to be as high as your leaders as your followers can follow you. You can't really lead them beyond that. And so then it becomes a matter of, what do I got to change about myself to make myself more integrous, so that I can lead people to higher levels of integrity? And the higher levels of integrity you want to lead people to, the more challenging it's going to be, and the more burden and responsibility will be placed upon you to be impeccable with your own integrity. But then again, that's what mankind needs the most. What we need the most right now to lead us out of all of our problems, including the climate change problem, the pollution problem, the economic problems we have, and many, many others, is we need high integrity leaders. And look how rare those are. And even, of course, when they do come, think of one. Think of one right now. Think of a modern, not someone who died years ago, but think of a modern high integrity leader that you've seen or heard. Chances are they're not the most popular person. Because, of course, as your integrity gets really, really high and you're leading people towards such a high ideal, it becomes harder and harder for people to follow, because they would have to completely change their own psychological makeup in order to follow you there. And integrity is an honest signal. You can't really fake integrity. You can try to erect a facade of integrity, but it's going to break down, and you yourself are going to know it's fake deep down. If not consciously, then at least subconsciously. The ego is going to know it's going to be playing these games, and so it's going to come through pretty clearly. And people with high integrity clearly see people with low integrity. But people with low integrity have a difficult time seeing people with high integrity or low integrity and making that distinction. You see, this is one of the core things of the sort of Trump phenomenon that happened, is that to anyone with any moderate degree of integrity or high integrity, it's just utterly obvious that Trump is a con artist and has no integrity whatsoever. He's like the least integrous human that I've seen in a long time publicly. Right? But a lot of his followers, the MAGA people, can't see this because, surprise, surprise, birds of a feather flock together. They also don't have high integrity. They don't know what integrity is. They've never contemplated it. They've never developed it. They've never faced the real challenges that come with developing it. And a lot of the people who follow him are just spiral dynamic, stage blue, religious, dogmatic people. And for them, they might think they have integrity, but they don't really have integrity. And we'll cover this a little bit later in the episode. They don't have true integrity. What they have is they have an aping of integrity, which is that they have the moral facade that they've erected through religion, but that does not mean one actually has integrity. In fact, oftentimes it means the opposite of that. Yeah, so it's easy for a con man to fool other people with low integrity. See, a con man can't fool someone with high integrity because the high integrity person just, you can smell it. If you have high integrity, you can just look at Trump for 30 seconds giving a speech or talking about something, answering a question, and you can just smell the bullshit coming out of his pores. You can just see the ego pouring out. And you would never follow that person. But more naive people who are at lower levels of spiral and ego development and moral development and spiritual development, who haven't done a lot of self-actualization work or spiritual work, they can't see it. And in fact, they admire what they see because it reflects themselves back to who they just see themselves in it. And they, of course, the ego just assumes that, hey, I'm great, so anything that's like me is also great. But it's a very dangerous assumption. The assumption there is that I'm great. Well, maybe you're not so great. So anyways, my question for you is, how grounded is your life in integrity? How about the projects that you work on? Whatever project you're working on right now, is it grounded in integrity? How much? Rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. Or are you just being opportunistic and are you just doing whatever works and you're just following the path of least resistance with your project? Whatever that is. Your project could be your marriage. Your project could be raising your children. Your project could be teaching children in school. Maybe you're a teacher, educator, something like that. Your project could be doing science or medicine, or healing people, or art, music, whatever kind of media you're working in. See, people with low integrity are very predictable. You can predict and you can bank on the fact that they will lie, cheat, steal, deceive, and exploit at any chance they get. It's like a law of physics. That's how predictable it is, right? It's completely predictable that the Trump administration would be filled with people who are very much like Trump, and that's exactly what we saw over the 4 years of the Trump administration. It's not that Trump himself had no integrity and that's it, and then he hired other people who were good and so forth. No, because the only people who would want to follow Trump are other low integrity people, which is why we saw in the Trump administration so many scandals with all of his administration members, and we saw sex scandals and racism and wife abuse and alcoholism and this and that. Like, because these are the kinds of people who would follow Trump. And of course, most of them were grifters. They were doing it for the publicity, for the book that they were going to write, for the Fox News gig that they were going to get, for the lobbying donations or jobs or opportunities that they would get after the fact. And then they were all backstabbing each other too in the administration. They couldn't even trust each other. Of course, that's the whole problem when you're dealing with low integrity people, is that it comes back to bite you in the ass. And it came back to bite Trump in the ass many times. If you followed the news cycles, a lot of people were leaking on him, backstabbing his own people. Like his own closest aides would leak, would backstab each other, would, gossip about him. And yeah, that's what you get when you have a community of low integrity and you have that kind of culture. And integrity is not just something we have individually, but then also institutions have it collectively or don't have it. It's a culture thing. And so all this was very predictable to you. Now, people blame me for saying, oh, Leo, why are you so biased against Trump? Why do you keep making everything so political? It's not about the politics. I don't care about the politics of it. I'm just bringing up these examples because they're so poignant and they're so illustrative. And in this way, like, I use Trump. Trump has been a gift to me because over the last 4 years, in the sense that, like, for me as a self-actualization teacher, as someone who tries to teach people how to become more conscious and more spiritual and more loving, all I got to say is do everything the opposite of what Trump does. And then you got the gist of what I'm trying to teach you. So in that sense, it's not political. It's just there's deeper dynamics here than politics. It's not partisan. It's not about Democrats or Republicans. It's really about what the psyche is, how the psyche behaves. And the fragmentation of the psyche. You see, so really, now we're starting to get a little bit more metaphysical here, is that the mind, the psyche, it can have different degrees of holism or integration or fragmentation. If it has extreme levels of fragmentation, it gets so bad that you can literally have a split personality disorder. You might have seen some movies about this or some documentaries. You can find them on YouTube, I'm sure. Or, extreme examples of psychosis and schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder where you literally are like talking to yourself, different voices in your head, like really schizo. And how are you going to live a healthy life that way? But see, even if you integrate your own mind and you don't have multiple voices and things like that, even if you do that, still you're fragmented from the rest of mankind, from animals, depending on how much spiritual work you've done. The more spiritual work you do, the more your sense of identity expands and includes animals, plants, the earth, other races and aliens, whatever is out there, right? You start to care about all of it more and more. You become more holistic. And as you do that, you start to approach God consciousness more. I won't go too deep into that here because I covered it in much depth. See my episodes about holism and holistic thinking, part 1 and part 2. Where I go real deep on that. But see, the problem is that a person with low integrity is corrupt and has a fragmented psyche. And this kind of fragmented psyche is going to have serious consequences. A lot of suffering, both to oneself, but also a lot of collateral damage done to others. As this psyche bumbles through life. Because see, a sick, fragmented psyche, what is it really looking for? It thinks it might be looking for money or for sex or for pleasure or for drugs or for fame or for status. This is sort of like what the Trump psyche thinks it needs. And this is what it's mostly pursuing. But what it doesn't understand is that really what it's seeking is not those things. It's seeking wholeness. It's seeking completion. It's seeking a transcendence of itself. It's seeking integration, and it's ultimately seeking love. That's what's really being sought. But it's being sought in these limited, partial, twisted ways, which never fully satisfy and lead to more cravings and more cravings. So it's an endless chasing of your tail, chasing various sorts of cravings and ways of trying to heal yourself. But the way that a very broken psyche tries to heal itself is itself broken. So it's applying brokenness on top of brokenness, which is sort of like Trump's whole life. And it never really integrates and it never really heals. Because to truly heal requires consciousness and a willingness to accept and to face the costs of integration. So the problem with the Trump psyche is that it's not willing to face the costs and accept the costs and the burdens of true integration. And so it's at war with itself and it's at war with the world, and it's creating polarity, and it creates war between factions in society, and it fragments society. And so we've discussed this before in my holism episodes. We've also discussed this in my episode about corruption. See my episode called How Corruption Works, because corruption is deeply connected with this issue of wholeness or lack thereof, and with integrity or lack thereof. And ultimately, the biggest problem with your lack of integrity is that it simply leads to an inability to love. Because love is God. Love is just another word for God. And love has many degrees to it. The more integrated you become, the more God-like your consciousness becomes, the higher your ability to love becomes, and the more satisfied you are with yourself, because your consciousness cannot be satisfied with itself if it's not able to love very deeply. That's really what you're after in life. Even if you think you're after success or money or fame or sex, you're really after love. That's just a particular limited, narrow manifestation. You haven't connected the dots yet enough to understand that. You don't really know what love is yet. You haven't become conscious of it yet. You think love is some sort of hokey, new agey spiritual idea from hippies or something, and that it's not tangible or scientific or material, but you're wrong. And if you want to know more about love, then check out my episodes, What is Love? Part 1, Part 2, and other areas where I've discussed love. I've discussed it quite a bit by now. So this inability to love is really a problem, because from that stems all the devilry. The reason you need the devilry and all the manipulation, the lying and the cheating and the stealing and the exploiting is because you don't know how to find love. Those are substitutes, poor substitutes for it. See? And finding love is difficult, because to find love, you got to really change yourself, grow yourself. Love is also sort of an honest signal. You can't really fake love. And you see this with Trump as well. See? It's quite clear that Trump is incapable of love, true love. Even with his family and his children, you see that his form of love for his children, I mean, he has some very narrow, twisted version of it, but it's so distorted. And really, when you get into the gritty details of it, it's quite ugly and perverse. It doesn't really inspire you. You wouldn't want to be his child. See, this is the ultimate sort of litmus test of how conscious you are, is if I ask you the question, would you want to be Trump's child? And if you say yes, that shows you that you don't see any of the stuff that I'm talking about. You have a lot of growing to do. And if you say, fuck no, Leo, I'd rather be dead than be Trump's child, because I would grow up to be so psychologically damaged and wounded if he was my father. Now, then you understand some things. You're a little more conscious. So love is just basically your connection to God. The less you're able to love, the more disconnected from God you are, and the worse your life goes. And then, of course, much of psychotherapy is about what? Bringing your psyche into wholeness and integration. We've talked about this as well before. We lie to ourselves constantly, even if you're not as bad as Trump, if your psyche is not as twisted as his and wounded as his, you still got wounds and twists in there, and you still lie to yourself plenty. You're still dishonest with yourself, and you're still at war with yourself within your own mind. And so we got to heal that within you by raising your integrity. Now, see, here's something you got to understand, sort of metaphysical about the ego. Because there's a deep relationship between love, truth, integrity, wholeness, and ego. So let's explain these relationships. So, you see, really when we get down to it, what we have is we have truth. We have absolute truth, which is everything that exists as it is. That's absolute truth. This, everything you see and hear and touch and feel is absolute truth. That's what is. That's what absolutely is. That's what's absolutely true in the universe. This state that's happening right now is what's absolutely true about the universe. Otherwise, it wouldn't be happening. Now, that's a very deep issue I won't go into here. I have separate episodes about what is truth. Go check those out if you really want to get deep into it. But to summarize here, truth is everything that is. It's how things actually are. That's truth. And then falsehood and deception is you pretending and playing games about how things are. It's a false perception of how things are. Right? So truth is integrity. Truth itself must be integrous. Why? Because truth is whole. Truth is what it is. And it can't be anything else. Truth has no room for non-truth within it. It's so absolute. It's so all-encompassing. What is. For example, like this, my finger is here right now. You're looking at it if you're watching this, or you're hearing my voice if you're listening to this as a podcast. So this is truth. It's here right now. It is what it is. Now, to call it something else, to call it a wing or a tentacle or a flipper or whatever, a tree, that would be falsehood. That would be out of integrity with what is true in this particular case. All right? So truth must, by definition and tautologically, must be integrous with itself. So truth literally is integrity. That's the pinnacle of integrity. It's just absolute truth. And then any kind of stories you make up about it and tell yourself and lies you make and this sort of stuff, that's you're getting further and further away from what is. And us humans, we live in our fantasies. Mostly. We don't really care about the truth very much. Mostly we live in our fantasies and we care about spinning narratives and fictions within our minds about how things are, how we believe reality is. But our beliefs and our ideas and our models of reality are not the truth itself. They are facsimiles at best and gross distortions and pure falsehoods at worst. So the pinnacle of integrity is just absolute truth itself, which, in other words, you can call that God. Of course, it's the same as love. I've explained before that truth and love are identical. Why is it love? Because truth is itself, and in a sort of it's almost too obvious. But you see, the truth must love itself. It's kind of weird to say that because usually we don't think of truth as an abstract concept, we think, and that we think that, well, truth is an abstract concept, and love is an abstract concept, so why would truth need to love itself? That doesn't make much sense. Love is something humans do. Biological creatures do love. No, wrong. Consciousness does love. Consciousness does love. Consciousness does the universe. Consciousness does humans. Humans don't do consciousness. Consciousness does humans. So love is something consciousness does. Consciousness either accepts itself or it rejects itself to various degrees. There's infinite degrees of self-rejection or acceptance. So if consciousness is accepting itself, accepting the present experience, For example, if you're having sex, it probably feels good for you under normal circumstances, and you love it, you accept it. In other words, you don't just accept it a little bit, you accept it a lot. Like, you accept it so deeply, you fall in love with the experience of it. In fact, we call it love, making love. Right? So you're really accepting that experience. But the problem is that the ego mind is fragmented and it's partial in which experiences it's willing to accept and which it isn't. So if you're experiencing like a toothache that you don't like the toothache, you don't want to accept it. Consciousness is rejecting the toothache. Why is it rejecting it? Because it wants to manipulate circumstances to eliminate the toothache. So for example, you reject the toothache, so you go to a dentist, he drills it, he fills it, and now you're happy again. So this is what your mind, this is the entire mechanism of your entire life I'm describing here. It's not just toothaches, everything. So see, in that case, consciousness is literally rejecting the toothache. Now you might say, well, Leo, is that wrong? No, it's not wrong per se, but it just means you're always going to be running around your life, accepting and rejecting stuff in this partial fashion. And that's survival. The only problem with it is that there's no satisfaction in it. You can do that your whole life, and you will, and you're never going to be satisfied. I mean, you'll have brief moments of satisfaction when you get everything you want, but most of the time you won't be getting what you want, and then you're going to be depressed and miserable and suffering. But the point is, that's not the point. What I was talking about here, metaphysically speaking, is that consciousness is truth, because consciousness is all there is, and consciousness is what is happening at this present moment. Anything that's happening, anything that's true is held within consciousness. And if consciousness was completely unbiased and impartial and completely holistic, it would completely embrace and accept all of itself. What would it reject? Why would it reject it? You might think of it as like this. A human being doesn't enjoy the sensation of a toothache, but the universe doesn't care. And really, we're talking about the universe's perspective here. Now, metaphysically, the highest perspective possible, the most holistic perspective, is the perspective of the whole universe. The whole universe is conscious. It's conscious of you right now. You, in fact, are the universe, conscious of yourself as a human. And maybe you have a toothache, maybe you have a backache, maybe whatever is bothering you, an itch on your nose you want to scratch. And so you're either accepting or rejecting these experiences. But from the universe's point of view, it's so impartial, so holistic, that so integrous that it just integrates absolutely everything. And that's called love. That's absolute love. That's God's love. That's the universal love. So truth equals love equals wholeness equals a lack of deception and lies, because the universe doesn't need to lie to itself. Can you see that? Only humans and egos need to lie to themselves to gain an advantage. The universe has no advantage to gain because it's the entire thing. What advantage would the universe gain over itself? It is itself. It loves itself. It accepts itself. What more does it need? It needs nothing. It's complete. It's infinite. It's unlimited. It is exactly what it wants to be. But a human wants to be something more than he or she currently thinks it is, because it's a part. A human deep down understands that it's a part of something larger. The human wants to expand into being something larger, whether that expansion is via money, sex, expanding your family, expanding your society, expanding your business, expanding your fame. All of that is a form of expansion into something larger. And eventually that leads to the ultimate expansion into everything. So that is that. But you see, the problem is that since the ego is a fragment of the entire universe, it's a fragmented consciousness. Literally, the ego's survival depends upon a lack of integrity. That's why integrity is so rare amongst humans. And if you're a high integrity person, you might be shocked at why is everybody else so low integrity? Well, because they got egos and they're surviving, and survival really requires a lack of integrity. Because fundamentally, metaphysically, to survive as a little part of the whole universe, you have to be committed to maintaining that little boundary of who you think you are, your identity, your limited identity. You have to be committed to maintaining that at any cost. no matter what it does to the rest of the system. And therefore, you're committed to unholism. And holism and integrity is one of the most threatening things to a condensed ego, because it threatens that boundary, right? Because your loyalty, if you're a deep, rigid ego, your loyalty is to maintaining the boundary of you at any cost. And then to let that go, to surrender that, to become more spiritual and more developed, you're surrendering that boundary. And as you do that, it's threatening. It's very threatening to your survival. You can't survive in the old ways that you used to be able to. You can't cheat, steal, lie, exploit, seduce, and manipulate people the way that you were able to before. This, in a sense, this makes success more difficult in a world where the majority of people achieve success via these means. It's difficult to win a political election without, in some way, cheating, manipulating, exploiting, or lying, which is why they say politicians are liars, lawyers are liars. Well, yeah, it's difficult to win it's difficult to be a lawyer without lying on behalf of your clients. That's, in a sense, what lawyers are paid to do, is to make up the best case. Lawyers are not paid to tell the truth in the courtroom. They're paid to only tell a part of the truth, the part that serves their client. That's like their literal professional obligation, is to do that. A lawyer's professional obligation is to not tell the truth. Now, that doesn't mean they go out there and lie deliberately, explicitly, because they can get, caught in that lie, and then the judge will reprimand them, maybe even disbar them. So a lawyer might not be able to lie explicitly, but they can lie in subtle ways, through manipulation, through omission, through the way they frame a situation for the jury and the judge, the stuff they omit and leave out and don't say, or the way that they emphasize a particular point in a way that it shouldn't be emphasized. They overemphasize certain aspects. So see, the lawyer is not really interested in the truth. And most professions are like this. That's survival. So as long as you're committed to survival of your little identity, there's going to be some degree of lack of integrity within you, and it's going to be a question of how committed are you? Like, if you're really committed to the Christian identity, or the Muslim identity, or the atheist identity, that commitment in and of itself, you might think, like, well, what's wrong with that? Well, what you don't see, what's wrong with that, is that commitment in and of itself to something so narrow and so limited, by definition, comes with a lack of integrity. Because it's not the whole. You're not integrating the whole universe if you only think you're a Christian. Or you identify purely as an atheist. You're not integrating everything there is to integrate. Therefore, you're less than the full absolute truth. And therefore, whenever your mind or ego or psyche comes into contact with something larger than yourself, it's going to have to invent defense mechanisms, and it's going to have to get sneaky. And it's going to have to, in order to enforce the smallness of your worldview. You see? And the reason you're doing that is because to admit of something larger than your worldview, that's admitting you're wrong. Ego doesn't like to admit that it's wrong. To admit that you're wrong, you have to admit that your view of reality is wrong. That has a cost. That has an emotional cost. That's painful to do. For a scientist or an atheist to admit that they're wrong about the fundamental metaphysics of reality is deeply emotionally disturbing and painful. It's so painful that they would even deny, if they're listening to me right now, that you're going to even deny that what I'm saying here has any validity whatsoever. But also the Christian and the Muslim and the Democrat and the Republican and the Marxist and the fascist. The problem is that all of these worldviews are just too small, and they commit you to a life of not being in integrity. the core of integrity is intellectual and epistemic integrity. And this also is not emphasized enough, especially within the spiral dynamic stage blue religious schools and teachings, because most people learn about integrity and morals from religion, or they don't learn about them at all in many cases. They're not, but religion doesn't teach you about epistemic integrity because religion wants to lock you into one paradigm, one little reality bubble, so it doesn't bother to teach you the epistemic tools that we've been talking about on this channel that you should be well familiar with by now. So why is intellectual and epistemic integrity so important? Because your epistemology is how you know anything at all. That's what that word means. How do you know anything? How do you know you're not fooling yourself about absolutely everything? How do you know any of your beliefs are valid? Well, that's a very deep and tricky problem. Philosophers have been wrestling with this question for thousands of years, and many of them have not figured out good answers, although there are good answers that I've shared with you in the past. So see, the problem is that it all boils down to epistemology and intellectual integrity, because in a sense, in order to have integrity within business or within art or within your family or within your relationships, your marriage and elsewhere, first and foremost, you have to have a clear perception and knowing of reality. You have to know where you're fooling yourself intellectually. You have to know where you're deceiving yourself. Because if you can't sort that out, you're going to be fooling yourself within business. You might be a tobacco CEO who genuinely believes that tobacco doesn't cause cancer because epistemically, you haven't really done any deep epistemic work. So you're not seeing how your own mind is fooling you into believing that, because it's simply convenient, of course, for you to believe that because you're earning millions of dollars from being the CEO of this company and selling this product. And, you couldn't sleep at night unless you believed that. So, and in your marriage, similar things are going on. And with your art and so forth, right? So epistemic integrity is crucial, which is why I teach it and stress it so much. And what that means is basically holding your lying mind's feet to the fire of reality and truth. Because what you discover after you get into your 20s or 30s and you start to really peek under the carpet of epistemology, you pull the carpet back and you look underneath what's in there, and there's some ugly stuff in there. You look inside your own psyche and you discover that there's so much bullshit, lies and deceptions and things you were taught in school and elsewhere by your family and religion and science and so forth that is just false, wrong, misguided, partial, and that's painful and difficult to see all those deceptions and lies. And why are those lies there? Well, because that's how you survived. The first 20 years of your life, you were busy surviving, using all these lies, and they were convenient, but you weren't even conscious that they were lies. So sometimes, you're innocent in that matter. You didn't necessarily construct them, but they were just programmed into you from birth by parents and school and teachers and religion and science. And so now your mind has been thoroughly self-deceived. And so to correct that, that's a multi-decades long process to clear all the junk out from under that epistemic carpet. And really, by doing that, you're aligning yourself closer to truth. And to even care to do that already requires enormous intellectual integrity. You cannot achieve this unwinding of self-deception, or jailbreaking the mind, as I've referred to it in the past. You cannot jailbreak your mind without intellectual integrity. And there's many degrees of intellectual integrity, and it's really difficult to do intellectual integrity well. Very few people have it. Very few people, even scientists and rationalists and some of these people, professors and academics who are supposed to be have high intellectual integrity, they really don't. Because it's not enough just to want high intellectual integrity. You actually have to do the epistemic work to achieve intellectual integrity. That means you have to study self-deception very thoroughly. Now here I'm referring you to my 3-part series on self-deception, which is foundational to this work. Self-deception part 1, 2, 3. Check that out. But basically, I give you a list of all the different self-deception mechanisms of the ego mind. These are the double standards you have, the rationalizations, the justifications, the self-biases, the defense mechanisms that are all there, projection and denial and the scapegoating and judging. And I mean, it's a laundry list of stuff. Go study that for a few years. If you're not aware of all those, then you're never going to be able to reach high levels of integrity because you're just going to be fooling yourself. It's pointless to debate or to even have an intellectual discussion with someone who doesn't have a very high level of intellectual integrity, because their mind is going to be like an eel. It's just going to squirm its way out into rationalizing and justifying whatever position it wants. This is what you see when you see a political debate, a religious debate, any kind of typical YouTube debate, atheist, theist, whatever. Neither side has sufficient intellectual integrity to really have a genuine inquiry into the truth. It actually is possible for two human beings, two minds, to sit together and to do a genuine inquiry into the truth and to make some progress. But this is not done virtually anywhere on YouTube or on TV or in the media. It's so rare because it requires such extraordinary levels of intellectual integrity and epistemic experience dealing with one's own self-deceptions. But it can be done if you really want. But there is a price to pay for it. How much ego are you willing to give up? How many of your pet ideas and beliefs and positions and intellectual attachments are you willing to give up? Maybe even you'll have to give up your job or your family, depending on what foundation your job. See, the thing is that people don't understand this, but a lot of times it's easy to construct a facade of success by creating success on a rotten foundation. And that's mostly what people do. When people create success, mostly the way they do it is on a rotten foundation. The problem with doing it, well, there's an upside and downside to that. The upside to that is that you can get quick success that way. And hey, I'm not saying I'm above it. I've done this in my life, so I'm speaking from experience. I've done it both ways. I've created success on rotten foundations and on solid ones. And so I have a good appreciation of both and the pros and cons. So the pro is that you can do it quickly and you can get good money and fame and so forth from doing that. But the con, excuse me, I got something stuck in my throat. The con is that it's fragile and you're insecure about it. It's a house of cards that could easily collapse with a little gust of wind. And that little gust of wind comes by way of, of ideas. You see, there are certain ideas that I can utter to you that would collapse the foundation of your business or your money-making strategy or your career or your pursuit of science or your religion or your political position or whatever. And so, of course, your ego has to be very defensive and insecure about that. The more solid your foundation is, the more secure you are, the less dogmatic you have to be, the more open-minded you can be, and the more you can explore reality, and the more you can handle the truth. But people with very rotten, flimsy foundations in all the different aspects of their life, and especially with relationships with their family and so forth, like most people have very rotten foundations. Like their life is held together with a little bit of, masking tape and some snot. That's mostly how most people's lives are held together. It's extremely fragile, and so they're extremely sensitive and insecure. They get easily offended. They get defensive. They become trolls. They lash out. They attack. They project. All of this stuff. Why is that happening? Because actually their life is not grounded on something true. That's one of the most amazing and powerful things about absolute truth, is that when you are conscious of absolute truth, when you are conscious of absolute love, it's so empowering because it's unshakable. It's abso-fucking-lutely unshakable. You're unshakable. Nothing can touch you. You feel immortal. You feel eternal. You feel complete. You feel integrated. That's the power of truth, is that truth needs no defense. If somebody is defending the truth, they don't got the truth. Truth needs no defense. Truth has no insecurity to it because it's absolutely true. It's exactly what it is. It can't be anything else. And you're totally conscious of it. And so you're completely certain of it. Not in an egotistical, narcissistic way, but you're just completely certain of it. By the way, I don't know if I've mentioned, but you should also check out my episode called What is the Devil?, where I also talk about corruption and many of these dynamics. Because what we're really talking about here, when we're talking about lack of integrity, we're talking about what I facetiously refer to as devilry. I sort of say that tongue-in-cheek. But it's a powerful concept. Don't dismiss the power of this concept of devilry. You see it all around you, and you see it inside of you. So go check out that episode too. It's one of my best. Okay, so we've covered the core of intellectual integrity. What else do we have to cover here? So of course, living a good life is founded upon honesty with oneself. If you can't be honest with yourself, then how can you possibly have a good life? And a person who doesn't value integrity cannot be honest with himself, first and foremost. And it's difficult to be honest with oneself. If you've tried. See, in fact, many of you listening here will say, well, Leo, what's the big deal? I'm honest with myself. That's already a lie. You're not honest with yourself. If it was revealed to you right now how dishonest you are with yourself, you would be so sick to your stomach you'd run to the toilet to vomit. You'd be disgusted with yourself. You'd be depressed. You'd hate yourself. That's how dishonest you are. All of us. And that self-dishonesty prevents you from achieving higher states of consciousness. Because why? What's the connection between dishonesty and consciousness? Because consciousness is absolute fucking truth. And your self-deceptions and lies, these are falsehoods. These are stories, pleasant stories you tell yourself within your relationships, within business, about money, about relationships, about your children, about other people, about evil and good, and about politicians and economies and race and sex and whatever else. Lies and fictions and stories that you've invented to suit yourself, to make it easier for you to survive, just to hold your life together. Because to construct a life solidly on a solid foundation, that's so much more difficult. So you might wonder, well, Leah, why should I do it? Let me take the easy route. Well, but the problem is with the shortcuts. With the shortcuts, those also have a cost. See, everything has a cost. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So it's a matter of choosing what kind of cost you want to pay. And sometimes, ironically, paradoxically, the costs of doing it the easy way end up being greater. Of course. Of course. You would know that if you had a little bit of wisdom. So it all revolves around truth. Why does everything in life revolve around truth? Because truth is the only fucking thing there is. By definition, there's nothing but truth. You say, but Leo, what about the falsehoods? The falsehoods, by definition, aren't true. So they aren't. A falsehood is something that seems like it is, but isn't. So fundamentally, epistemically, and ultimately metaphysically, the more your life is aligned with things that don't exist, aren't true, the worse your life gets. The more manipulations you have to do to sustain that fucking illusion. And eventually your illusion collapses because you can't keep it up forever. And then you suffer from that. And from this come most of the collective evils of mankind. So wouldn't it be better to just to realize right here and now that path won't work? Forget that path and devote yourself to the path of truth, which is the same as to say the path of integrity. Become more truthful, become more honest with yourself, even when it burns you. That burning, sticking your feet on the fire of truth, as I call it, that is a true signal, an honest signal of the fact that you're growing. It's painful, but it's a good kind of pain. See, this other direction where you're going down the road of untruth, that also brings you pain, but that's not the good kind of pain. That's the bad kind of pain, because that pain won't grow you the way that this pain will. This is a pain of purification. This is the suffering of purifying your soul and spirit, and this here is just the karmic consequences of devilry, which just leads to more devilry. Now, of course, sometimes you can go down this road long enough and then you wake up and then you switch directions. That's also valid. It's valid. Being a devil is valid. Nothing wrong per se with being a devil, as long as you're okay with it. The problem is that you won't be okay with it. You think you'll be okay with it, but you won't. It's very painful being a devil. And also, you don't understand the beauty you're missing out on here. And truth is a beautiful thing. Love is a beautiful thing. Really, what your ego wants is your ego wants all of the benefits of this path while staying on this path and not changing anything about itself. That's what you really want. That's the kind of videos, if I put those videos out there, you would be paying me millions of dollars and millions of clicks for how to do that. But I hate to break it to you, that it can't happen. You can't get the benefits of truth and beauty and love and God while being a devil. There's costs. There's trade-offs. So if you care about truth, you must care about integrity. Why? Because without integrity, you're going to be opportunistic and you're going to be tempted into falsehood. Because the falsehood is always shorter, more convenient, easier, more comfortable. How can you ever reach truth when you're always doing what's most opportunistic? You see? If you're wondering what is this truth, Leo, that you keep alluding to so vaguely, it sounds like mumbo jumbo. It's not mumbo jumbo. It's a very tangible thing. I assure you, go check out my episode called What is Truth? And then the second episode called How to Discover What is True, where I actually guide you through a sort of a process of how to find the truth. Because you might be wondering that, Leo, how do I find this magical truth you're talking about? Well, go check that out. How to Discover What is True. Search for it. It's a good episode. So the problem is that when you have low integrity, you can't trust yourself. And then this leads to low self-esteem and insecurity. Because deep down, you know that your life is built on a house of cards. And you start taking shortcuts. And then these shortcuts lead to problems. And then that pushes you to take even more shortcuts to deal with the consequences. And then it just turns into this endless cycle. And then if you lie to others, you also have to lie to yourself. You can't effectively lie to others without lying to yourself. And when you lie to yourself, you're disconnected from the only thing you have. See, you are the only thing that there is in life. There's nothing but you. This whole thing is you. Life is you. When we're talking about life, we're talking about you. So the more disconnected you are from yourself, the more you lie and try to hide from yourself, you're just playing a game of hide and seek with yourself. And that's ultimately what life is. It's God playing hide and seek with itself, dividing and reuniting with itself, disintegrating and reintegrating itself. But all the lies and the dishonesty it corrupts your mind. And you got to ask yourself, why are you doing it? Why do you tell a lie? Why is lying so common? Why do people lie? Because it's very effective for survival. That's the only reason. because you fear the emotional labor that would be entailed by not lying, by telling the truth. Like, if you cheat on your spouse or on your taxes, see, and someone asks you about it, did you cheat? You're going to say no, you're going to lie. Why are you lying? Well, because if you said yes, that, first of all, that would be painful for you to admit to yourself, and to others, it would ruin your reputation, how others perceive you, all those things you got to maintain. But also there would be legal consequences perhaps, or you would lead to a breakup of your relationship. You'd have to work extra. You'd have to pay somebody some money. Maybe you'd have to go to jail for a month or a year, whatever. You'd have to deal with all the fallout from that. And so to avoid that, you lie. I mean, perfectly understandable why someone would do that. But then, of course, if you had high integrity to begin with, you wouldn't have cheated to begin with. And then you wouldn't have to deal with all this fallout. So the solution is to have high integrity to begin with. And then the question becomes, well, how do I raise my integrity if I was coming from an environment with low integrity? And see, I totally get you there. And in fact, maybe I'll talk about this in part 2 a little bit more, get a little bit more personal. But I actually came from an environment, I was raised in a family where one of my parents was very low integrity. And this had huge ramifications on my life, the trajectory of my life, why I even got into personal development, and my own deficiencies in integrity. A lot of those were sort of inherited from my family situation growing up. And so, I mean, people who grew up in environments and societies and like poor countries, third world countries, war-torn countries, corrupt countries, it's going to be much more difficult for them to have high integrity than those who grew up in nicer areas, simply because if you were born in a nice suburb or something like that and your parents were wealthy, you don't have much reason to lie, to manipulate, to cheat, to steal. But if you grew up in some war-torn, Iraq, where your house was getting bombed and all this sort of stuff, and terrorists were knocking on your door, and they were going to kill you if you didn't say the right things to them, if you didn't lie to them, then you were forced to lie. You were forced to manipulate. You were forced to exploit. You were forced to be corrupt. Otherwise, you couldn't survive. Corruption ultimately is just survival. So it is a real challenge to raise yourself from an environment of low integrity to high integrity. You were very lucky. Most people don't appreciate it. If you had two parents who were high integrity or even moderate integrity, if you didn't have a low integrity parent, mother or father, you were extremely lucky. You don't know the kind of impact that would have had on you if one of your parents was low integrity. And if you had two low integrity parents, man, you're probably psychologically fucked for a long time, and you're going to have to spend decades correcting that. Now, don't get depressed. You can correct that. I'm not saying you're fucked for life. I'm just saying you got issues, and that's going to require some serious work. And I can empathize because I did have one parent who was very low integrity in many ways. And I have a very intimate knowledge of all the problems that come with a low integrity life. And it's difficult to unwire those habits because you pick those habits up as you're being raised. For example, in my family, lying was very common. It was not something that it was just like a way of survival. So of course, I became a very good liar. And to this day, I'm a very good liar, and sometimes I'm tempted to lie a lot. But then I have to hold myself back and say, I could use that tool in this situation, and I could gain an advantage, but it's going to cost me down the road, and I don't want to go down that road. It's just like with doing, heroin. It's going to give you a great boost for now, but it's going to cost you later. The other problem with low integrity is that it becomes difficult even for you to become successful sometimes. Sometimes it's possible to get very successful through low integrity activities like Trump has, cheating on taxes and screwing people out of business deals. That's possible. But a lot of times, in some ways, it's amazing what Trump has done, is how far he's come with such low integrity. But for many people, for many ordinary people like you, it'll actually be difficult for you to even earn $1 million without some integrity, without raising your integrity. Because look, to earn $1 million realistically, you got to work pretty hard. You got to be disciplined. You got to get up and do, even if you're doing something shady and scammy, even if you're going to be a con artist, you got to work pretty hard at being the con artist. Even if you're on Wall Street, you got to work pretty hard, wake up early, put in 12-hour days, 80-hour weeks to scam your money the way that you do. But even to do that, you got to be pretty disciplined, and you got to be able to trust yourself. Like people who have such low integrity, they can't even trust their own words. For example, when you tell yourself that you're going to do something, do you do it, or do you fail and quit the next day? Like you tell yourself you're going on a diet and then you quit. You don't have enough integrity just to even go on a diet. Most people don't. When you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to work on this project, and then you quit the next week because it gets tough. Well, that's a lack of integrity. See, you keep telling yourself you're going to do all this stuff. You're going to self-actualize. You're going to meditate. You're going to do a retreat. You're going to do some psychedelics. You're going to do some ayahuasca. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. You're going to, communicate better in your relationship. You're going to be nicer to your children. You're going to judge less. You keep telling yourself all these things, but then you go right fucking back to what you were doing. That's a lack of integrity. And the more you fail to follow up on your own values and goals and ambitions and principles, the lower your self-esteem drops. Your sense of self-efficacy, you start to feel like a victim in the world because you feel like every time you want to do something, your life experience that, well, I want to do this thing. I want to be an artist. I want to be a musician. I want to be a movie director. I want to be a video game designer. I want to have a website. I want to have a YouTube channel. I want to have kids. I want to have a marriage. I want to have great sex. I want to go do pickup. I want to learn how to flirt with girls. I want to be funny. I want to learn all these things. I want to meditate. But then you do all these things and you keep failing and failing and failing because you're not persevering enough. You're not disciplined enough. And then after you failed enough of these times, you become a victim. It's called learned helplessness. Learned helplessness. And then you really believe like life sucks and you can't really be successful and all this stuff, Leo, you're talking about, this is impossible, or it's just fantasies. My life doesn't work this way. Well, that's because you've fallen into this downward cycle of negative self-efficacy to the point where you feel like you don't have much control over life anymore because you failed so many times. And part of that has to do with how you reframe failures. I mean, I failed so much. A failure is crucial. Failure is not a bad thing. Failure is the greatest thing ever. But what you have to do is you have to persevere and not get discouraged by the failure and keep going even harder after you fail. So once you start adopting sort of cheating attitude towards life, then you start to cheat everywhere. But then cheating, of course, becomes counterproductive and it boomerangs, like all selfish activity does. All selfishness boomerangs. That's karma, in other words. So paradoxically, leading a life of high honesty and high integrity, it might seem like, Leo, you're saying it's so difficult. I have to surrender the ego. Yeah, but it's only difficult if you're really attached to the ego. Actually, you could joyously sort of surrender the ego. I mean, it's still going to be difficult, but it's a good sort of challenge. It's like the challenge of, lifting weights at the gym. It's challenging, it's a little stressful, it's a little painful, but it's good for you. Whereas when you're sitting on the couch watching reruns of Lost or something, and you're eating buckets of ice cream and you're getting fatter and fatter and fatter and lazier and lazier and lazier, have you ever done that? And then you actually feel so bad, you feel worse. There's more suffering and pain from doing that than if you would have just gone to the gym. That's what it's like. Be careful trying to live life the easiest way, because usually people who are chasing life to be the easiest, they end up having life the hardest. So develop integrity, I hope you can see, is the core of self-actualization. It's the core of spiral and ego development, as we've talked about in the spiral models and the Susan Cook-Greuter models. It's the core of spirituality, because spirituality is connection to God, and God is truth, love, and wholeness, therefore requiring infinite integrity. And that's why a lot of times saints are revered. And, people often say, well, I'm not a saint, so don't expect me to be perfect. What they're really doing there is they're creating an excuse for their own lack of integrity. And why do we revere these saints? because supposedly, and of course a lot of this is just bullshit and stories and myths, but supposedly at least some of these saints had exceptional levels of integrity. And a human with exceptionally high levels of integrity is a natural leader. People look up to that. They admire that. Why is that the case? Well, there's actually a very deep reason for that. And we'll get to the answer to that here in a little bit of a roundabout way, but basically here's how I explain it. So here's something you should notice is that when you encounter or see acts of high integrity, they will actually make you cry, tear up with tears of joy and appreciation. You probably experienced this watching some movie. If you tear up during a movie, Braveheart or 300 or Band of Brothers or, some Saving Private Ryan, I don't know, whatever movies tear you up, I don't know. What's going on there? Something actually very profound is happening that most people don't understand. Or, for example, people get inspired to tears. Christ's sacrifice on the cross. Of course, that's sort of the ultimate example of high integrity. Or, I remember that scene from Braveheart at the very end. It's probably going to make me tear up. At the very end of Braveheart. I'll restart it. When they put Mel Gibson on the table and they're gonna they capture him, the whole movie was about, was it the British who were trying to capture the English or whatever, they were trying to capture Mel Gibson. Finally they capture him, and then they're gonna torture him, and then they flay him out on this table in public. The whole crowd is watching, and the king is there. The king has been his enemy this whole movie, and the king is on his deathbed. He's about to die. He's so old. But the king's last thing the king wants is just for Mel Gibson to admit his rebellion was wrong or whatever, and then he can die in peace. And so they tie Mel Gibson to this torture table, and they have this torturer guy with all his torture implements, and he's starting to gut Mel Gibson, and all he has to do, they tell him very explicitly, all Mel Gibson has to do is just admit that he's wrong and apologize for leading this rebellion. And of course he just yells, "Freedom! Freedom!" Right? That's what he yells. And then they kill him. Integrity. It's a movie about integrity. So there are many movies like this. Why do these movies make us cry? Why do they make us emotional? Here's the magic. Here's the deep spiritual explanation. Because what's really happening when this occurs is that your mind and psyche, which is really connected to a universal spirit, which is God, but it's clouded through layers of ego and survival and defense mechanisms and all this shit. Something pierces through this scene you're watching of Mel Gibson or Jesus on the cross or whatever. Something pierces through all the veils of all that ego shit, all the human nonsense and all the lies and manipulations, cuts right through it and connects you to truth, to love, and to God. What's really happening is that the thing that is animating the entire universe, which is love, has been fragmented and polarized through various limited consciousnesses and egos, which are partial, not infinite. Sort of like white light being polarized through a prism into the rainbow colors, right? So as a human, you're one of those rainbow colors, like you're yellow or you're red or whatever. But then as the universe, as God consciousness, you're white, pure white, all of them integrated together. And so what's really happening is that the God in you is recognizing, your spirit is recognizing intuitively, in a way that's much deeper than your conscious logical understanding. It's intuiting that the highest good in the universe is love. And your spirit recognizes selflessness. And so when you see selfless actions or integrous actions, loving actions, self-sacrificing actions, when you see this depicted on the screen or you see it in real life, it brings tears to your eyes because it shows you who you really are or who you could be if you did this work and cleared up all of your shit. And you fully both actualized and transcended yourself and became God. So the God in you recognizes the God in others and recognizes that connection and recognizes the good with a capital G. If you want to know more about that, check out my series, or not series, but episode, What is Goodness?, where I explain what goodness is. So you are implicitly recognizing the beauty and majesty of reality at a metaphysical, spiritual level when this happens. And when that happens, you're in touch, you're in your highest self. You're in touch. You feel that love for a little bit, but then usually you forget about it, you fall out of it very quickly. So really the whole point of spiritual work and the whole point of integrity is imagine if from now on you lived your life with that kind of integrity that the Mel Gibson character exhibited in Braveheart. If you just start thinking about that, it'll bring tears to your eyes of who you could be if you did that. Start thinking about how you could impact people, how you could lead people, how you could move people, how you could connect and unite people. This is how you develop the most powerful vision and sense of life purpose for your life and the deepest meaning. This is what life is really about. And there's not one way to do it. You don't just do it through meditation. There's a million ways to do it. And it all, of course, hinges on truth and integrity. How do you make yourself more integrous? But yeah, see, it's difficult. It's going to be difficult. It's rare for a reason, because it's difficult for a finite human to embody the attributes of the infinite. That's really what we're talking about. How do you turn the finite into the infinite? And really, you can't. You gotta die. The finite has to die to the infinite. So really, we're talking about the ultimate self-sacrifice to achieve this, which of course is the greatest fear you have, which is of course why it's so rarely achieved by people. And when it is achieved, it is deified, literally deified, as in the case of Christ or the Buddha. There's a great quote that I found from Thomas Leonard, which says, quote, Integrity reveals beauty. End quote. Integrity reveals beauty. And it does. Very high levels of integrity are beautiful. Why are they beautiful? Because what is beauty? Beauty with a capital B is truth and love and wholeness. The most beautiful form of light, we might say, by analogy, is white light, pure white light, because it contains all the other light within it integrated. That's the highest beauty. And then all the other colors, they're also beautiful, but not absolutely beautiful, because they're partial and they leave something out. If you got blue, you're missing red. If you got red, you're missing yellow. If you got yellow, you're missing green. But if you got white, you got them all. Integrity has a power of its own. Truth has a power of its own. Truth is powerful and it can cut through illusion. That's the power of truth. And that's why throughout history, mankind, rulers and politicians have always tried to control those who had high integrity, tried to kill them, tried to excommunicate them or imprison them. Why? Because people with high integrity are aligned with the truth, and the truth is the most dangerous thing to a devil or to an ego. It erases the illusions that many powerful rulers and business people and so forth, devils and egos, the illusions, house of cards that they can construct in order to maintain their power. Like the illusion of a monarchy, right? A monarchy is pure fantasy, pure illusion, built on complete bullshit and lies. That's what a monarchy is built on, and it needs those lies in order to maintain itself. So someone who comes along and starts to question the monarchy with truth, asking questions and so forth, he gets his head chopped off. That's how it works. We see this happening right now in Russia with Navalny versus Putin. Navalny is a pretty remarkable, high integrity political leader, and he's taken a real beating for it. He might even get killed for it, which is actually quite likely. Pretty amazing. Huge. It requires huge bravery, fearlessness. Now, I want to clarify a few things here about Spiral Dynamic Stage Blue. So why do religious people stress Stage Blue values such as integrity, character, discipline, family values, morality, righteousness, honesty, virtue, decency, goodness, hard work, honor, loyalty, responsibility? Surely you've heard religious people stress the importance of these. And oftentimes they do it in a very sort of puritanical way. They're very puritanical about it. Because, and in fact, they do it so puritanically and so dogmatically that it ends up backfiring, such that reasonable scientific people and skeptical people who are not subscribing to that dogma, they, like I said earlier, like what happened to me, they get a bad taste in their mouth just from these words. Like when I hear family values, I want to throw up when some, conservative on TV is saying them. Why is that? Because we know the hypocrisy of it, right? We know the evangelical preachers who preach, about virtue and righteousness and honesty and all this, and then they're actually cheating on their wife with some, gay friend in a parking lot, and they get caught and they're lying about it. So, we've seen enough of these cases that we know the hypocrisy of it. And so we see enough of that hypocrisy and we start to think like, oh, well, all that stuff is just bullshit. Well, that's a mistake. You got to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The reality is that these characteristics are extremely important to living a good life. The problem is that these characteristics are easily faked. And getting the genuine article is very difficult. It requires a lot of consciousness and work, and it cannot be done ideologically or dogmatically, or robotically or algorithmically. You cannot follow the 10 Commandments to get integrity, character, and some of these other values. So a lot of what's happening is that spiral dynamic stage blue people, they don't have a very sophisticated understanding of human psychology and epistemology and all these topics that we spend, years talking about here on Actualized.org. They don't have this information. It took mankind many thousands of years to get to this point to have this kind of information accessible as it is now, easily for free and so forth through the internet. Before that, 1,000 years ago, how did mankind tell itself how to live life? Well, through these principles, and they taught them very religiously, robotically, dogmatically. And of course, the majority of people who followed these principles, their lives did improve, but also not to the highest levels. So really what was happening is that all of these characteristics and virtues and values, they were really pulled from the deepest, most integrous sages and mystics dating back thousands of years, who discovered these through God consciousness. They discovered truth and love through God consciousness and profound mystical states and psychedelics and meditation techniques and yoga and so forth. And then they tried to share this wisdom with the rest of mankind. But of course, the rest of mankind did not have enough integrity or consciousness to even understand what they were talking about. And they just turned it into rigid rules to follow. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not cheat and judge and other things like this. So the problem with stage blue is not that they have these values and that these values are wrong somehow. These values are amazing. These values are important. The problem is that they don't really give you the tools and understanding necessary, the depth of understanding necessary to really understand how to genuinely develop these values and virtues. They just tell you to follow some script. But a script is not consciousness. And what they don't tell you is that consciousness is the key to everything, because everything is consciousness. Truth and love is consciousness. So without consciousness, you can't get these qualities genuinely. So most religious people, what they end up doing their whole life is, because they've been brainwashed to believe that they have to be moral and value family and value honesty and decency and hard work. And so they do these things to a certain degree, and in a certain sense it helps them. But they don't really master them, and they don't really understand what generates them or why they're important. And so a lot of what they do is they just fake them. Even a lot of preachers and rabbis and imams fake these qualities. They don't really have it, because you can't have it, because to have it, you have to break down the ego. To break down the ego, you'd have to also break down Christianity, Islam, Buddhism. You have to break down all these ideologies too, which of course they're attached to, and they don't want to break them down. You have to deconstruct everything to truly have integrity, character, righteousness, and honesty, and morality. Morality cannot be a formula. And so the problem we have is that we have a lot of these, stage blue versions of morality, and people have grown sour on them and disenchanted with them, rightly so. But you have to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And basically what we need is a version of spiral dynamic stage blue, but which is totally open-minded, totally non-ideological, non-dogmatic, inclusive, holistic, relativistic, and meta. Epistemic, metaphysical, grounded in mysticism and in consciousness, and not partial to any partisan or sectarian human invention or construction or organization. And of course, that's otherwise known as stage turquoise. Spiral Dynamic Stage Turquoise. So it's not that the religious fundamentalists are wrong per se. It's just that they're very, very partial and very limited in their way of going about aping genuine consciousness and love and holism. They don't know any better. They need better tools, better methods, but the problem is that their minds are so closed that they're resistant to learning those tools and methods. The problem with stage orange, which comes after blue, is that stage orange tends to overly dismiss and poo-poo integrity and morality as quaint religious fantasies and wishful thinking, enforced by some external God. But see, integrity is not enforced by an external God. You are God, and if you want to realize you're God, you're going to have to fully come into integrity. Otherwise, you won't realize that you're God. You don't have to. Nothing bad will happen to you other than the consequence of your own karma and suffering, which is pretty bad. It's punishment enough. You see. So there's a lot of truth in religion, but there's also a lot of bullshit. And that's the difficulty of it, is that it's so, the truth and the bullshit in religion, and even in spirituality and in New Age teachings, is so muddled together that for many stage orange sort of scientific rational people, they're so disgusted by the whole thing that they don't even want to spend time disaggregating the truth from the bullshit. And so they just throw everything out, maybe with the bathwater. And then that leads to the sort of lack of ethics and lack of morality of stage orange, which we see on Wall Street and business, in the business world, with capitalism run rampant and amok and all this sort of stuff. So the fact that these stage blue people are often hypocrites, that's not a refutation of the things that I'm talking about here, or the importance of stage blue, integrating stage blue. It's very important to integrate stage blue. It's just that they're aping. You have to understand that they're doing the best. It's like an ape seeing a human do something, and then he doesn't have enough facility to do what the human is doing at the same level of quality. So the ape will just ape what the human is doing, then it looks funny to us. Well, that's what the religious people are mostly doing, these Christians and Muslims and so forth. And yeah, it looks funny. Sometimes it's evil, it leads to devilry. It backfires at boomerangs. Yes, of course, and they're huge hypocrites. But this problem of hypocrisy goes so deep, it's so difficult to not be a hypocrite. Even calling others hypocrites is already hypocritical, because you yourself are a hypocrite. All of us are, to various degrees. The problem with integrity is that we demand it from others, but we make excuses for ourselves, because, of course, that's just our selfishness and our self-bias. Check out my episode, by the way, about self-bias for more about that. Check out my episodes about survival, part 1, part 2, very important episodes about how survival works. So there are a few traps I want to point out here as we wrap up with developing integrity. You see, another point about the religious stuff, stage blue, is that, now you're probably wondering, well, Leo, so it seems so difficult. How do I develop integrity? Well, we're going to talk about that in part 2. But part of the challenge is that it's difficult to explain. There's not a formula for how to do it. So I can't just tell you some step-by-step thing you follow and then you develop integrity magically easily. No, it's going to be a hairy, messy process, and there's a lot of traps, a lot of self-deception involved, which is precisely why the religions have a sort of a formula they give you. They give you a rigid dogmatic formula because otherwise it's too difficult for most people to grasp. At least with the formula, you can kind of follow it and you'll get mediocre results, but at least you'll get a little bit of something. You won't be, a rapist or a murderer, hopefully, if you follow the formula. And, they try to instill it to you with fear, like if you rape somebody, you're going to hell. And that's why you shouldn't rape somebody. And then someone finds out that, wait a minute, Leo, you're saying that all these morals and rules are relativistic and that they're just constructions, and that really I could rape somebody and God won't send me to hell. You're saying God is all loving, so why wouldn't I rape people if God still loves me and I won't go to hell even for rape? Leo, that seems wrong. Well, no, it's not wrong. It's just that the idea is that you're God and you're supposed to realize that raping somebody is not in the highest integrity and aligned with truth and with love. See, you're supposed to recognize that using your own consciousness. It's not that some God sitting up above you is going to send you to hell and torture you for not recognizing that. If you don't recognize it, you'll be a rapist, and that's it. And that's that. There won't be any further punishment for your raping other than you being a rapist. And whatever, however humans choose to punish you for that. God's not going to punish you for that. But you see, it's a lot more nebulous and fluid. It's difficult. How is an ordinary, simple person supposed to work with that and actually use that to build integrity? It's easier to build integrity by just telling someone, if you rape somebody, you're going to hell and that's it. So then the person, in their mind, they simplistically just say, okay, I guess I can't rape anybody. Okay, I won't do it. And then many people just don't do it out of fear. But that's an illusion. That's a fantasy. That's a fantasy that was constructed to help. Those are like training wheels to help you to not be a total monster. And that was necessary for society because, we don't want people running around raping and murdering people willy-nilly. We want them to have some fear about that. It's probably good. Creates for a better society, a little bit more order. That's what Stage Blue is about. It's all about creating order. But they create a lot of fantasies and dogmas to create that order. So that's the cost. And then that locks down the mind. The mind literally has to be straitjacketed to create that order for society. And then higher stages of development releases that straitjacket. The problem is that when we release the straitjacket completely, how do you not become a fucking monster? And that's sometimes what baffles people about this work is, I tell people, I've said in the past in some of my episodes, I've said stuff like, I've experienced levels of self-love so deep as my consciousness became infinite that, for example, if I raped somebody or if I pushed a nuclear code, button to launch nukes and to kill millions of people, most people would judge me as a monster for doing that, right? You probably would judge me as a monster and never watch my stuff again. But the levels of love I've experienced, the consciousness I've experienced is so deep that I would completely forgive myself for doing that. And I would completely love myself after the fact, even after I did that. And for most people, that doesn't compute in their mind because their mind is not flexible or open enough to grasp this sort of thing. Because they really believe that, no, that's so evil. How could you do that? And then you forgive yourself? No, you're supposed to feel guilty. Because guilt is something you've been taught as a mechanism to constrain your mind to get you to fucking behave like a fucking dog. You see, you were trained like a dog when you were growing up. And when you took a shit in the corner, they beat you for it, metaphorically or sometimes literally. And then you learned the lesson. And now you're acting out of fear. But what I'm talking about is not acting out of fear anymore. But when you fully become conscious, there's no more fear. There's only love. And there's truth. So let me point out a few of these traps that exist with developing integrity. Here's a huge one. Be very wary of this. Beware the trap of the superego, judgment and moralization. So what happens is that at first, you start out, you don't give a shit about integrity or morality, you poo-poo the whole thing. Then maybe you listen to me talking about it and then you contemplate and you realize like, oh, wait a minute, I was wrong. Leo was talking about some important stuff here. It is important. So let me start to become more moral myself. Let me work on my integrity. So you start to develop integrity, but then the ego latches on to integrity and says, look, I've spent the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years developing my integrity. Look how integrous I am. And then you want to show it off. And then when you see somebody in the news, you see Trump on the news, whatever, and then look at that devil. Look how evil he is. Look how little integrity he has. And you criticize and you debate and you judge and you yell and you whine and you do all this. And of course, as you're doing this, you're falling really, truly out of integrity. Because judgment brings you right out of integrity. Judgment is a low integrity activity. So beware the trap of judging people with low integrity as your own integrity increases. Because the ego is going to want to play this game like, I'm the good guy, And those are the evil guys. I'm the self-actualized one. I'm the awakened one. I'm God over here, but those are devils over there, and they're not doing spiritual work, and they're not doing the things I want them to do. And I'm the righteous one, and they are the wicked ones, and we got to fight those people over there and destroy them, right? This is the basis for all holy war. And not just holy war, but a lot of, outrage politics and all this sorts of stuff. So be very careful about this. Genuine integrity doesn't judge others. It recognizes how difficult it is to develop integrity. When you truly develop your integrity, by the time you reach the highest levels of integrity, you're going to go through such a fucking grind to get there and so much suffering, and you're going to surrender so much of your ego that you're going to actually become compassionate toward those who don't have integrity, because you understand how difficult it is for you, how difficult it was for you to achieve your integrity. The cost was staggering. And so you understand, of course, that most people aren't going to pay that cost. And of course, many people didn't have the benefits you had. They didn't have access to these videos. They didn't have access to psychedelics. They didn't have access to a good family or whatever that helped you to develop this high integrity. So compassion for those with low integrity is very important. This is also the mistake that many stage blue fundamentalist preachers and religious people make, is that they adopt this righteous ego of condemning all the wicked people down there who are not buying into their, high ideals, but they're just ideals. They're just ideas. They're beliefs. They're not embodied. They're not at the level of consciousness. They're just like scripts that these preachers have realized. And then, of course, they're not able to follow these scripts even themselves. Also, beware the trap of getting jealous and envious. It's easy, once you start to work hard on your raising your integrity, to get jealous or envious of those people who don't give a shit about integrity at all and just running amok out there and earning lots of money, millions and billions of dollars, Donald Trump style. And then you start thinking to yourself, well, why the fuck am I working so hard on my integrity while this fucker out there is earning millions of dollars and having a bunch of sex? And you get envious and jealous of that. So beware of that trap. Beware of the stage blue trap of morality and integrity, which is a rigid following of some sort of rules, trying to turn integrity into an algorithm where you don't have to be conscious, you just have to follow rules. That's not genuine integrity. It's not genuine consciousness. That's not going to work. It's very crude. It could have some, it can help you. I'm not saying it doesn't work at all. It does work. It prevents like the worst of the worst scumbags, the stage red, from doing what they do. It prevents some criminality and creates order for society, but it can only get you so far. It doesn't get you very far. You got to go beyond that. Beware, of course, also the trap of guilt. So you might start to think that feeling guilty is a good way of developing integrity. And you'll probably start to feel guilty as you start to first develop your integrity. But of course, the problem is that guilt is also low consciousness. And it's also going to backfire on you. And you're not going to be able to reach the highest levels of integrity through guilt, which is why I say that if I ever do something really bad in my life, I'm at the stage where it's almost a little bit dangerous to say this, where I won't even feel guilty about it. Now, that doesn't mean I never feel guilt. Sometimes I still feel guilt, but I'm also at the point where I've experienced such deep levels of self-forgiveness and self-acceptance and self-love that I could truly do something horrendous, socially horrendous or monstrous, and not feel guilt about it because I will forgive myself. And for many people, that's scary. It's scary to those people who don't know how to control themselves consciously without the use of guilt, right? That's something that has to be developed. That's pretty advanced thing to develop, is how do you act like a loving, caring, decent person in the world without guilting yourself constantly? Most people are only able to do it through guilt. And a lot of these stage blue people are so guilt-ridden, and it ruins their whole ability to enjoy life, because they're following all these rules. It's not coming from a genuine intrinsic motivation. It's an extrinsically enforced set of rules. And then they feel guilty when they break something, and they're living their whole life this way. And they think that's the only way to do it. It's not the only way to do it. In fact, it's a trap. You got to transcend that. But of course, they're scared. They start thinking, well, Leo, if I don't feel guilty for raping somebody, then what's going to stop me from raping them? Well, consciousness and love and selflessness and the transcendence of all of your egoic cravings. That's what will, not your guilt. You don't need the guilt. When you're truly loving and conscious, you don't need guilt to prevent you from raping somebody. You also don't need a prison sentence or some other kind of extrinsic, punishment, or the notion of hell, burning in hell. You don't need this idea once you're truly conscious and awake, not to rape somebody. I know that's a shocking. I know that's a crazy idea for some of you, but yeah, it's possible. It's possible to not be a rapist and not live in fear or guilt about it, and to not have a craving to do it. That's possible, but it might require some work. So, anyways, to wrap up here. It's very easy to preach integrity. In fact, it's very easy for me to talk about all this stuff. The real hard part is after I shut off this video, I got to go back to my life and I got to actually practice some of these things that I've said. Otherwise, I'm going to look like a huge hypocrite. And then I will be out of integrity. And then that will make me feel bad, and I'll be out of alignment with myself and with the truth and with love. So you see, that's the problem here, is that it's hard to practice this stuff, but easy to talk about. And there are serious sacrifices that need to be made. Really, this is what the spiritual journey is all about. So that's it for part 1. As your homework assignment, I want you to contemplate the importance of integrity in your life. Think about areas where you lack it, where you have it, and what consequences it has, and how everything interconnects, all the stuff we've talked about, all the different areas of your life, business, relationships, family, marriages, sex, all this. How does integrity fit into all that? And then do you want to get on the path of developing integrity? And if you do, stick around for part 2 next week, where I will talk about how to do that. I'll give some examples and talk about some of my own personal struggles and challenges for how to do it. All right, that's it. I'm done here. Thanks for watching. Please click that like button for me and come check out Actualized.org. That's my website right there. You will find some exclusive content there. You'll find my book list, pretty important. The Life Purpose course, I've already plugged that. Pretty important. Check that out. You won't regret taking it. What else? The blog, exclusive content on the blog, the forum, come chat on the forum. If you want to support me on Patreon, patreon.com/actualized. And actually, something new is coming. I'm going to be launching a new channel, second channel, called Actualized Clips, which will be these long-ass fucking videos that I do, cut up into little 5-10 minute sections. I hired an editor. He seems like a good editor who's going to be doing that, managing the channel, posting those up there. So for those of you who are complaining about the length of my videos and you want something shorter and punchier, more to the point, with less rambling and repeating myself and less examples, I like to give a lot of examples, then you will probably like that Clips channel. I will post an announcement when it's launched. We're working on that now. It should come out probably in the next few weeks, month at the most. All right, and the last thing that I'll say is this. So you might be wondering, well, Leo, you made a pretty strong case here for stage blue values and conservative values. And, aren't you like a very liberal, socialist type of person, like progressive type of person? And yet here you are acknowledging the validity of conservative values. Isn't this a contradiction? No, it's not a contradiction at all. If you've actually deeply watched and studied my Spiral Dynamics series, you understand that the spiral stages build on top of each other. And it's not about being orange to the exclusion of blue or green to the exclusion of orange, but it's about integrating them all and building on top of each other. So stage blue is actually a very important stage. And in fact, for many of you, that's where your personal development needs to begin. Stage blue develops things like basic discipline and work ethic, which many of you don't have. How can you be successful in life? How can you earn a lot of money? How can you meditate? How can you self-actualize when you don't even have the ability to discipline yourself to eat a proper diet? Or to work, to have a strong work ethic, to follow up on your life purpose, or to meditate every day. You can't. So even though a lot of times I rag on conservatives or conservative values, it might seem like, or I speak down to stage blue, well, it is because I'm speaking down to it. But I'm speaking down to it not because I reject stage blue, it's because, I've integrated a lot of stage blue. A lot of the beginning of my life in my teenage years, all through my 20s, I worked a lot on developing a strong work ethic, discipline. How do you think I got here? I don't get here by rejecting stage blue values. I could, of course, do more to integrate stage blue values even deeper, and I should, and I will do that in the future. I could always use more discipline. I could always, polish up my work ethic and so forth. There's a lot of good stuff within stage blue. The problem is that stage blue also, and especially now in pop culture with right-wing media, has gone so far, swung the pendulum so far towards the crazy, toxic end of stage blue. There is a healthy version of stage blue, which is underrepresented in the media, and especially in right-wing media. And it is important. And make sure you watch my Spiral Dynamic Stage Blue episode and you really develop stage blue. Don't skip it over. That's gonna really retard your self-actualization in your spiritual work. You need to do very healthy stage blue while avoiding all of that toxic culture war, ideological, dogmatic, closed-minded bullshit that you see in right-wing media that is a part of stage blue, but you don't need to go down that extreme side of stage blue. You can be on the healthy side of stage blue, where you develop work ethic and family values and honesty and discipline and character and decency and hard work and honor and loyalty and responsibility. These are very, very good things. You just have to distinguish between doing it in a healthy way and doing it in a limited, rigid, partial, dogmatic way and then getting stuck in that for the rest of your life. That's the real problem. So there's no contradiction here. And I don't spend that much time teaching stage blue. This episode is unique in that respect, but most of my time is spent teaching other stuff because a lot of the stage blue values and things are so basic. Really, you should have learned this in the first 20 years of your life. But of course, I know that many of you haven't. I have some deficiencies as well. So we do have to remind ourselves to go back sometimes and work on the lower stages of the spiral. It's not all about turquoise and yellow. A lot of times you can't get to turquoise and yellow until you spend a few years or even a decade really mastering blue, orange, and green. And if you have no idea what these colors mean, then you got to go watch my Spiral Dynamics series. It's a life-changing series that will change how you see all of mankind and your relationship to it and where you will go in your development. It's basically a map for human psychic development. Very powerful stuff. All right, that's it. Stay tuned next week for part 2.